Role of chorus in Murder in the Cathedral. The word chorus is derived from the Greek word choros that implies a dance accompanied by singing. It came to be incorporated at the festivals held in the honor of gods, especially to honor god Dionysus, and eventually it became an important part of Greek drama. The chorus acted as a mouthpiece of the dramatist, which had a powerful impact on the audiences. The insight of the drama was stated by the chorus, and hence the drama was universalized. The chorus expressed the anxieties, fears, and judgment of the average citizen, making their opinions as verdict in history. This is precisely how chorus becomes a critic of the drama. It can exemplify the past, can pass a judgment on present, and throw light on the future. In Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral, 272 lines out of total 1,443 lines are given to the chorus, which forms nearly 19% of the play. In his early life, Eliot's treatment of women in his writings was unsympathetic. He was even labeled by some of his readers as a misogynist. However, down the lane, when we consider his later works, we find that Eliot has produced women in a brighter outlook. To justify this statement, I take the example of his consideration of women characters to form part of chorus in Murder in the Cathedral. The women chorus, putting their feminine traits of emotion and subtleness, brings out the subject of Martyrdom of Thomas Becket. The women chorus seems to seize the opportunity to question the dominance of logos, the point of reference of truth, which is the man. The text is largely male-centric, as the setting dates back to medieval times. At the outset of this drama, we get a sense of the rigidity of male hierarchy in the society of the 12th century England, where the female counterpart takes the position of the other. Her status, therefore, in the 12th century society makes the audiences of the play assume her position to be of limited scope. The logocentrism is swelled through the dialogue of the second priest, who goes on to address women as foolish, immodest, and babbling. To counter this explicit patriarchy, the speech of the women chorus starts with the first-person pronoun, hence giving way to the assertion of female writings. The necessary allusion can be made here to the concept of a creature feminine by Helen Kixos in The Laugh of the Medusa, 1975, where she asserts, "Woman must assert herself, must write about women and bring women to writing from which they have been driven away as violently as from their bodies." The idea of the original scene of Adam and Eve, in the course of which men and women down the lane underwent sufferings, has been well embossed by the women chorus of Eliot. The depiction of the emotions of suffering and sadness has been well defined by the chorus, in which, through the lyrics, women chorus also premonitions the upcoming danger in the life of Thomas Becket. When the fourth tempter propels Becket to take note of his actions and its consequent sufferings, the chorus highlights this through its position of insecurity that lingers on in a person's life, and men are mere puppets in the hands of destiny. The theme of martyrdom, which holds central to the Murder in the Cathedral, is to a large extent dependent on the chorus. In elaborating the character of Becket and in amalgamating between the protagonist and the commonality, the chorus takes part in the ethereal evolvement which the diverse characters and audiences undergo. Chorus embodies the consolidated progression towards the consciousness. Eliot's theory of poetic drama concerning not only the socio-economic problems of the outer world, but also with the inner psychic mental abilities of an individual is clearly indicated through the voice of the chorus. In this respect, the play gives account of Beckett's spiritual struggle with the temptations. The significance of employing the chorus also lies in T.S. Eliot's approach to hide his dramatic weakness of fine characterization and of a well-knit plot. The reasons as to be largely dependent on the chorus for the action of the play were: 1. That Eliot did not have too many historical accounts of the incident of St. Thomas Becket's martyrdom. The second reason was that Eliot wanted to focus on themes of martyrdom and death in the play through the women chorus, and the third reason being the writer, who had already become adept in writing some of the best poems, could write the verses better than framing a drama. Hence, the cries of women chorus could cover his dramatic weakness and the defects of his theatrical endeavor. The chorus tries to recreate the passions and sufferings of martyrdom of Becket on stage through Eliot's tool of objective correlative. According to Eliot in his essay, Hamlet and His Problems, the only way of expressing emotion in the form of art is by finding an objective correlative. In other words, a set of objects, a situation, a chain of events which shall be the formula of that particular emotion, such that when the external facts which must terminate in sensory experience are given, the emotion is immediately evoked. It is the chorus that acts as a lens to Becket that he sees his deplorable end approaching. Thus, through the chorus, the spectators in different layers of acceptance or rejection see a reflection of themselves as an onlooker, observer, and as a gazer. Throughout the piece, the chorus delivers 7 choral odes. These choral odes, when looked at as a collective work, tell a story. They begin with brief foreshadowing of events that will occur later in the play, but then quickly jump into necessary storyline, one which summarizes the events of the past and then immerses the audience into the common man's view of the events in the present. The first choral ode begins with heavy foreshadowing. The women of Canterbury are drawn towards the cathedral, but they do not know why. At first, there is confusion. They question, quote, "Are we drawn by danger? Is it the knowledge of safety that draws our feet towards the cathedral?" As they reach the cathedral, however, they come upon a realization, quote, "There is no danger for us, and there is no safety in the cathedral. Some presage of an act which our eyes are compelled to witness has forced our feet towards the cathedral," unquote. They recognize that it is not their own personal danger that draws them closer to the cathedral, but instead the foreshadowing of a horrifying act in which they will be forced to bear witness. It will be an act so terrible that safety cannot be even found within the hallowed halls of the cathedral. After the period of foreshadowing, the mood of the first choral ode drastically shifts from the dark and mysterious presage of an act to a description of the concrete past. The remainder of the choral ode serves as a way to bring the audience up to speed on the last 7 years of Canterbury's history. While they convey the events of the past, the women of Canterbury express a constant lurking fear for the safety of their archbishop. Hence, the lines are typical of the first choral ode, for not only do they explain to the audience that Archbishop Thomas Becket has been gone for 7 years now, but they fear for his well-being and for the well-being of Canterbury if he were to return. As the choral ode draws to a close, the women of Canterbury give off a sense of unavoidable waiting. With the commencement of the second choral ode, the general mood shifts from confusion and waiting to fear. The women of Canterbury have been informed that Becket is returning to Canterbury. Such an announcement stirs great anxiety amongst them. They fear that their way of life will be disrupted and endangered. They plead to a Thomas who has not yet arrived too. Return quietly, leave us to perish in quiet. You come with applause, you come with rejoicing, but you come bringing death into Canterbury. A doom on the house, a doom on yourself, a doom on the world. All the people know is that with Thomas comes death upon their home of Canterbury. So they beg him to leave us, sullen Dover, and set sail for France. The fear of the second choral ode becomes a reality in the third. The women of Canterbury know what decision Becket has made. They tell him, quote, "We have not been happy, my lord. We have not been too happy. We are not ignorant women. We know what we must expect and not expect," unquote. By saying this, the women of Canterbury mean that they understand the consequences that Thomas has chosen by staying in Canterbury. They know that he will perish if he stays. Then the women begin to despair. They cry, quote, "God, give us always some reason, some hope. But now a new terror has soiled us, which none can avert," unquote. And, quote, "God is leaving us. God is leaving us. More pang, more pain than birth or death," unquote. The women of Canterbury, who always took faith in the idea that God was protecting their archbishop, believe that Thomas has turned away from the Lord's protection by deciding to remain at Canterbury, for not even God could protect him from the wrath of what was yet to come. The fourth choral ode that opens up the second act heads in a completely different direction than the intense despair of the third choral ode. Instead, this choral ode is more accepting, for the chorus knows that the death of Becket is coming. Nature is used throughout this choral ode to foreshadow his death. At one point, the women of Canterbury say, quote, "The starved crow sits in the field, attentive, and in the wood, the owl rehearses the hollow note of death," unquote. The starved crow that they speak of symbolizes the 4 knights who arrive in Canterbury shortly after the choral ode is delivered. The owl symbolizes the result of their visit to Canterbury, a death that they fear will be brought upon Thomas. Though they have accepted the situation, the women of Canterbury feel helpless, for all they can do between the moment and Thomas's death is wait. As there is nothing they can, they say, "We wait, the time is short, but the waiting is long." As the fifth choral ode begins, the helplessness from the fourth choral ode carries over, but this time it is coupled with an air of guilt. The sixth choral ode is met with a shift from helplessness to intense distress. The final choral ode begins not with despair, but instead with grateful praise to an all-powerful God. Thus, the 7 choral odes in Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral tell the story of the commencement view of the events that occurred during the fateful December of 1170 in Canterbury. Through foreshadowing and interesting use of language, Eliot crafts the chorus to be one of, if not the most fascinating character found within the whole play. Their unique perspective on Thomas Becket's murder truly makes Murder in the Cathedral one of the greatest plays of the 20th century.